PlayStation 5 is something that I'm extremely looking forward to. I've always been a PlayStation guy myself, and the PS4 Pro is good, but the next generation of consoles will be a world apart from what we have now. So welcome to our Leaks and Rumors series, the longest running series on the channel, by the way, 6 years and still going strong. So we've already done a few episodes on the PS5 before, so make sure you watch those videos first for the full specs and performance and everything you need to know in terms of those. But in this one, I'm just going to talk about the design and some exclusive features. So yeah, here are all the latest leaks and rumors on the PS5, including our own PS5 concept based on the actual PS5 patents. So yeah, grab some snacks and drinks and let's have a look. Access any region-restricted websites such as, for example, Netflix US from outside the US and make your connection private and secure by using private internet access. Check it out using the link below. Okay, so in late August 2019, a German tech website called Let's Go Digital spotted a Sony patent on a future PlayStation design. And this shows an absolutely insane looking unit. So not only does this patent show an extremely big and thick unit, but it also seems to have a ton of cooling, and this thing looks so futuristic. We have this big A-shaped indentation here in the middle, which is full of spaces for the air to flow. We then have some gigantic fan exhausts on the sides, some more fan exhausts on the back and the bottom of the side panels. This thing is built like it's going to have a jet engine inside, and maybe that's because it will. Well, not literally, but it will be really powerful. But okay, how legit is this patent really? Well, it's a genuine patent filed by Sony on the 13th of August. Now, there are a few people saying that this is just a patent for the development kits of the PS5 and not the final unit. But then Sony and almost everyone else, they never really do that. Like, why would a company file a patent on something that won't even be the final version and something that would never really see the light of the day outside of the development studios? And here's something really interesting. So if we take a look at the Sony PS4 Pro patent, the filing looks almost identical to this PS5 filing. So we do have a different designer, but they both seem to have Japanese names, so, you know, very likely people from the Sony HQ in Japan. They both have the same registration code office, BR, so yeah, these two applications look extremely similar in terms of, well, everything. Oh, and guess what? The PS4 Pro design that we've seen in the patent is exactly the same design that we've seen in the final version. And this is why I believe that the PS5 will look either identical to the patent filing or extremely similar. Oh, and here's another thing that's worth pointing out. So you know that A-shaped vent in the middle of the PS5? Well, that's actually an upside down V. And V is, by the way, the Roman numeral for 5. And yes, I know that this is a bit of a long stretch, but it could also be one of the reasons why Sony decided to go with this unusual design. And then even if you take a look at the side vents, they also look like Vs. So yeah, this could be a reason behind Sony's weird PS5 patent design. Now, another reason for this design is, like I said before, for cooling. So the way the cooling seems to work on the PS5, at least from this patent, is that the PS5 sucks air from that middle section, that V, which looks to be a gigantic air intake. So yeah, airflow shouldn't be a problem, and then it blows all that air out from the sides. And yeah, it actually makes more sense to have the cooling on the front, by the way, now that I think about it, since on the back, that's usually where all the ports are and all the cables connecting your TV to the PS5. And the consoles usually end up being very close to the wall, which means that airflow is usually heavily restricted on all the consoles. The front, however, that's the only side that's, you know, empty, doesn't have anything in front of it usually. So yeah, it's free to breathe. So it makes a lot of sense for the vents to be placed on the front and the sides rather than on the back. We still have some vents on the back, but nothing compared to what we have on the front and the sides. Speaking of the front, here we have what seems to be the Blu-ray drive. We have 5 LED indicators and also 5 USB Type-A ports, as well as one weird connector which could be for the PSVR. And then we have the circular module, which we didn't really know what it was at first, so we actually removed it from our concept. But we've actually had a recent report by Gizmodo that claims that a PS5 will actually come with an actual camera, yes, a 4K camera for live streaming built right into the console itself. And apparently the Xbox 2, the next generation Xbox Project Scarlett, will also have something similar as well. So I think that this is a really good idea overall. The only problem is, you know, the angle. So yeah, I'm just hoping that they would add some sort of, you know, a really wide angle lens, and then you can crop in on yourself, or maybe even a pivot or something that you can move the camera, or maybe you'll probably do this in software, but, you know, something to adjust that camera rather than, you know, just a fixed module, because that would be an issue for a lot of people. Now, we've actually modeled our very own concept based on this patent, and we even made some very small design improvements, which I think make it look even better than the actual patent. Let us know in the comments. Yeah, so essentially what we did is that we removed that weird PSVR connector and also that camera circle, optical in favor of just 5 USB Type-A ports, which are now perfectly aligned with that Blu-ray slot, which on the patent, interesting enough, they were not. We then made the whole console thinner. Now, it's still thicker and overall larger than the PS4 Pro is, however, it's a much more slimmed down and also a sleeker version of the patent that Sony has. Now, we also kept the big V-shaped intake that Sony had on their patent, but we redesigned the cooling on the sides. So instead of just having the fan outtake, we added a water cooling system that goes from both sides and then loops on the inside, cooling both the CPU and the GPU at the same time. Now, Sony will very likely add some blue LED lights to the intake and the outtake cutouts, so we added some lights as well. Now, in our case, we actually made the water cooling tubes glow in blue, and this is something that's quite easily doable by Sony, by the way, and I think it looks nuts. I think it looks really, really good. Now, realistically, guys, I don't see Sony using a water cooling system, unfortunately, such as ours and our concept, just because you'll have to refill the water every now and then. Now, if they do it properly, you might not have to, at least not that often. But from a functionality standpoint, this would actually work. The CPU and the GPU could be located right in the middle, and in that case, they would be cooled by both the water cooling system and the fan intake and outtake. On the back, we kept the same ports as on the patent, so 4 more outtake cutouts, 2 more USB Type-A ports, the power connector, an Ethernet port, as well as an optical audio connector, which could again be replaced by a PSVR or an external camera connector. You know, on the patent, you can't really tell what kind of port that is, so yeah, it could be replaced in case Sony does decide on not including an optical connector. And then finally, on the bottom, we have the rubber feet, which basically point towards the PS5 being just an horizontal mounted console. So especially considering the air outtakes on the sides, don't expect to mount this vertically unless Sony releases some first-party stand specifically designed for this. Okay, now remember that Gizmodo report that I mentioned before? Well, that one is actually pretty huge. Apparently a credible source has sent some photos to Gizmodo, 2 photos before the PS5 patent even got leaked. And both photos actually matched up with the patent perfectly. So yeah, from the looks of it, this is the PlayStation 5. Also, the codename for it seems to be Prospero, and according to Gizmodo's report, Prospero is actually the name of the main character in William Shakespeare's The Tempest, and you'll see why that matters in a second. It matters because apparently in that play, Prospero is a wizard that's supported by other characters like Ariel and Gonzalo. And those 2 characters, Ariel and Gonzalo, are, fun fact, the actual codenames for AMD's next-generation CPU and GPU for the consoles. Also, according to Gizmodo's report, the reason why the PS5 won't arrive until late 2020 is actually because of ray tracing support. So we know that both consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox 2, will support ray tracing, which is awesome, really awesome. However, it's just not ready yet on AMD's part for that Navi or Navi architecture. Okay, now here's something really awesome that I personally found. So the PS5 will indeed support 4K resolutions at 60 frames per second and even 120, as well as 8K resolutions as well. Now, this is not just me saying this or even saying this based on leaks. This has been officially confirmed by Sony. So this is 100% coming, 8K and 4K, 60 and 120, which is awesome. That's insane, actually, even, more than awesome. Now, back in November 2018, Sony actually had a private event in Tokyo where they showed some 8K TVs, and on those 8K TVs, we had Gran Turismo running in full 8K at 120 frames per second. That's insane, guys. 8K at 120. That's insane. And what's even more insane is the fact that Gran Turismo is actually a PlayStation exclusive game. Like, you cannot play this on an Xbox or a PC. You need to have a PlayStation in order to play that game. And I really don't see Sony porting that game to the PC just for a demo that I've only showed to a few handful of people at a private event. So I strongly believe that 8K 120 frames per second, that footage was actually coming from a PS5. Okay, now back in September, and this is where I'll mention that specific thing that I found. So I've had a chance to go to IFA in Berlin, which was awesome. Follow Instagram, @ZoneOfTech for some Berlin photos. Not really, just only a few of them, and I might post some more, but anyways. So I went to Sony's booth, and there they actually had some Sony 8K TVs. And can you guess what one of those TVs actually was displaying? Yes, I've seen it with my own eyes, Gran Turismo running in full 8K. I've seen that in person. So what are my thoughts on what could be the first PS5 footage? Well, to be honest, it looked extremely sharp. Like, I could get so close to the TV and literally see the smallest details. It was incredible. Like, those vector images where you keep zooming in and the image still remains crystal clear. However, the graphics weren't great, so they looked like a PS3 game, which does make a lot of sense actually. So Sony did say that PS5 will support 4K 60 and 4K 120, but the thing is they haven't really said anything about the refresh rates for 8K resolutions. So for movies, I'm assuming that 8K 120Hz will be supported, but for games, I mean, there's not even a single graphics card on the market, a PC graphics card, that can do even 8K 30 frames per second on the highest settings. Not even to mention 8K at 120 Hz. So the graphics would need to be turned down quite significantly, reason why they look like a PS3 game on, this potential PS5. A good example of this, by the way, would be Wipeout Remaster for the PS4 Pro. If you know that game, it's a really awesome game. That's a PS3 game which got remastered for the PS4 Pro and PS4, and it actually runs in native 4K 60 on the PS4 Pro. However, the graphics really look like a PS3 game rather than, the more modern graphics that we have with the PS4. On the PS5, however, I really don't see Gran Turismo running at 8K 120 with those low graphics and settings. I actually do believe that most games, if not all games, will be capped at 4K 60 or 4K 120 in some rare cases, and then dynamically upscaled to 8K, just like, the PS4 Pro already does with most games. So most games on the PS4 Pro, they run in 1440p, and then they get dynamically upscaled using checkerboarded rendering to 4K. Now, here's something also quite interesting. So we even had a PS5 controller leaked a while ago. Now, this is something that I've actually talked about before in the previous video, but I want to address it again in this one just a tiny bit because there's a few things that I want to mention. And the main reason for this being the PS5 development kit. So if you take a look at this photo, right behind the controller, we have a development kit for the PS5, which actually looks way different to that PS5 patent that got filed for recently. These are thick units that look like a PC case, and these are something that Sony and Microsoft do indeed send to developers so that they can work on their games, but they never send the final units before the consoles get officially announced and released. And here's a fun one. Here's a first look at the PS4 development kits for when, the PS4 got released back in 2013. So as you can see, this was a very fat unit similar to that PS5 development kit that we've seen. And yeah, it didn't resemble anything when compared to the final release unit. Instead, the one that the final unit ended up looking like was actually this patent. Also, if we take a look at the PS4 development kit controller, it does look very similar to the PS5 one, as in it was very thick, it was chunky, it was bulky, and probably quite uncomfortable as well. But it did have all the main features and, the main looks of the final version of the PS4 controller that we ended up getting. For example, it had the light bar, it had a touchpad in the middle, and like I said before, the general look that the PS4 controller that we got. And then taking a closer look at a PS5 controller, we can see that the touch bar is now a full touch screen that can display a few social elements, such as the ability to chat with that display, which is amazing. Like typing with the controller is a nightmare, and a lot of the times, even using your smartphone is slow because you have to open up the app and connect it to the PS4. And yeah, having a touch keyboard on the actual controller is huge. That's awesome. Aside from this, the D-pad seems to have been redesigned. We also have two speaker grills on each side of the display, and the share and the option buttons have been inverted so that they're horizontal now rather than, vertical like we had before. My only concern with this controller is the battery life. You see, if you add a display to your controller, which normally lasts you for like, 5 to 6 hours on the PS4 at least, you would severely impact the battery life. But yeah, I mean, other than that, the PS5 is looking like a beast of a console, and I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, let me know in the comments what do you guys think about a PS5, the controller, the touch display on the controller, and everything that I've talked about in this video. Check out the previous ones if you want to learn more about the specs and all that, and definitely subscribe notifications if you want to see more detailed tech videos like this one hopefully was, and more Leaks and Rumors episodes like this one was. And also, you can check out our website, zenofhtech.com/articles, in which we now post articles, written articles of videos such as this one, and some cool other stuff as well. So definitely check it out, and yeah, let us know in the comments what you guys think about everything, the videos and the website. But yeah, this has been pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zen of Tech, signing out. Cheers.